Christmas is supposed to be the safest time of the year, a season of light, warmth, and familiar comfort. But safety is often just a feeling, and feelings can be deceiving. On quiet winter nights, when the world slows down and doors are locked, something else has room to move. The stories you're about to hear don't begin with screams or chaos. They begin with ordinary moments, a lonely cabin, a late shift, a simple decision that felt harmless at the time. And that's what makes them terrifying. These are stories about how close people came to something they were never meant to encounter. So lower the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, sometimes the most frightening part of Christmas isn't what happens, but what almost does. I never thought Christmas could feel that silent. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind people talk about when they describe snowfall or warm lights behind frosted windows. This was a heavier silence, the kind that presses down on your ears and makes you aware of your own breathing, the kind that feels intentional, as if the world around you is holding still on purpose. The cabin resort my uncle owned sat far north, tucked against a frozen lake and surrounded by miles of dense forest. In the summer, it was busy. Tourists, boats, laughter carrying across the water. In winter, it emptied out. Snow buried the road in, and the lake froze solid enough to walk across. Only a few cabins stayed open for people who liked isolation, cold air, and the feeling of being far removed from everything else. That Christmas, my uncle was traveling to visit family. He asked if I could stay behind for a few days and watch the place. The job was simple: keep the heat running, check the water lines, make sure nothing froze or broke. Guests let themselves in with key codes. There was a snowplow on call if I needed it. The main lodge was stocked with food. I would be paid well, and I'd have the entire place to myself. It sounded like the easiest holiday I could imagine. Christmas Eve passed quietly. 2 cabins were occupied. A couple in their 50s who waved politely and kept to themselves, and 2 younger men I saw briefly at check-in and then not again. I cooked a simple dinner from whatever was in the freezer, half-watched an old movie, and went to bed early. Outside, snow drifted softly through the trees. The wind moved gently through the pines, creating a steady, distant hush. I fell asleep thinking this might actually be nice. The knock woke me just after midnight. It wasn't loud, it wasn't urgent, it wasn't the kind of pounding that comes from panic or desperation. It was measured, even, almost polite. 3 soft taps, spaced perfectly apart. I lay still in the dark, wondering if I had dreamed it. Then it came again. Same rhythm, same calm patience. What made my stomach tighten wasn't the knock itself, it was where it came from. Not the front door, where the porch light and driveway were. It came from the back door, the one that opened straight into the woods. No path, no lights, just snow and trees and darkness. No one had any reason to be there, especially not at that hour, especially not in that cold. I got out of bed without turning on the lights. Moonlight reflected off the snow outside, casting a pale glow through the windows. As I reached the hallway, the knock came a 3rd time. Still calm, still controlled. No irritation, no hurry. I didn't open the door. I stood beside it and asked quietly, "Can I help you?" No answer. No footsteps moving away. No shift in the snow. Just silence. I leaned toward the narrow vertical window beside the door and looked out. There was no one there. No footprints. No disturbed snow. Nothing to suggest anyone had been standing there at all. I locked the door again and returned to bed, telling myself it had to be something else. Wind, a branch, my mind filling in gaps because I was alone and half asleep. I almost convinced myself when I heard the sound. A soft click. Deliberate, precise. The sound a metal latch makes when a door is closed carefully. It didn't come from the back door, I would have known. It came from inside the lodge, from the narrow utility closet in the hallway, the door with the stiff latch that always made that exact sound. I knew it had been closed earlier. I remembered walking past it. I lay there, barely breathing, listening for anything else. There was nothing. Eventually, I forced myself to get up. I turned on every light and searched the entire building. Kitchen, storage rooms, upstairs, even the crawl space access. Everything was empty. The closet door was shut tight. Inside were only hoses and a water tank. Both exterior doors were locked. The snow outside was pristine. Morning came like a relief. Sunlight softened everything. I rode the snowmobile past the occupied cabins, waved at the couple as they stacked firewood. Birds chirped. The world looked harmless again. I laughed at myself. Lack of sleep, nerves, old buildings make noise. I spent the day reading, eating, letting my phone die without charging it. I went to bed early again, flashlight on the nightstand this time. At exactly 1:23 a.m., I awoke to a different sound. A scrape. Slow, gritty, something being dragged across the back door. It lasted a few seconds, then stopped. A moment later, another scrape, shorter, higher up. I grabbed the flashlight and crept down the hall, the floorboards betraying every step. I stopped at the back door and turned on the outside light. There was something stuck to the narrow window. A small square card, edges frosted with ice. I opened the door just enough to grab it. Outside, the snow was untouched. No footprints, no drag marks, nothing. Inside the card was a photograph. It showed me standing at the front window of the lodge. The angle was from behind. I recognized the hoodie I was wearing. I recognized the posture of my shoulders. I recognized the moment. It had been taken recently. I dropped the flashlight. It clattered across the tile as I slammed the door shut and locked it. I pulled every curtain open, turned on every light, and sat at the kitchen table holding a butcher knife until the sun came up. In the morning, I found the second card. It was taped to the inside of the front door. Another photo, me sitting at the table, knife in hand, flashlight beside me, taken from behind, which meant that while I sat there all night, someone was inside the lodge with me, close enough to watch, close enough to photograph. I didn't stop to think. I grabbed my bag and left. I didn't lock the door. I didn't look back. My uncle sold the place that spring. I still don't know who it was, or how they moved through the snow without leaving a trace, or how long they had been there before I ever heard the knock. But I learned something that Christmas. Sometimes horror doesn't announce itself with violence or noise. Sometimes it arrives politely, with a soft, even knock in the middle of the night, and the certainty that someone was closer to you than you ever realized.
I took the Christmas Eve shift because no one else wanted it. The warehouse was part of a regional distribution center, the kind of place that handled seasonal overflow, toys in November, decorations in December, cheap electronics and novelty gifts that would end up forgotten by February. By the time Christmas came around, the building was usually quiet. Most shipments were done. Most workers were home. That night, it was just me. One guard on duty, one vast warehouse, endless rows of shelves stretching into darkness, lit only by fluorescent lights that hummed softly overhead. Outside, the temperature had dropped well below freezing. Snow pressed against the loading bay doors in uneven drifts. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a thin layer of ice that glittered under the security lights. I remember thinking that the place felt larger than usual, emptier, as if the absence of people had left behind something else. My job was simple: monitor the security cameras, log any motion alerts, check the doors every hour, keep the radio on low volume so I wouldn't fall asleep. I had done this dozens of times before. Night shifts had a rhythm to them. Once you learned the sounds of a building, nothing surprised you. At least, that's what I believed back then. The first thing that caught my attention was the motion light in aisle 14. It came on suddenly, flooding the row with harsh white light. I glanced at the monitor. Aisle 14 was part of the seasonal storage area. Christmas decorations, artificial trees, boxes of ornaments, and plastic reindeer waiting to be shipped back after the holidays. There was no one there. No movement, no shadow passing between the shelves. The light stayed on for a full minute, then clicked off again. Motion lights misfire all the time. Temperature shifts, dust, small animals getting into places they shouldn't. I logged it and went back to my coffee. 5 minutes later, aisle 14 lit up again. This time, I leaned closer to the screen. Something had changed. A cardboard snowman display, one of those cheap human-sized cutouts, had shifted. It had been leaning against a pallet earlier in the night. Now it stood upright, facing directly toward the camera. I felt a small chill, but I told myself someone must have moved it earlier and I hadn't noticed. Perspective tricks happen on grainy security feeds. Still, I marked it in the log. By midnight, several motion alerts had gone off across different aisles. Each time, the camera showed nothing that should have triggered it. No people, no forklifts, just decorations in slightly different positions. A string of tinsel hanging lower than before. A box of ornaments tipped onto its side. At 12:17 a.m., the system flagged movement in the loading bay. That got my attention. Deliveries weren't scheduled for Christmas Eve night. The roads were bad, and the company avoided overtime like a disease. I switched to the loading bay camera. Headlights cut through the snow outside. A truck was backing up to the dock. It was unmarked, no company logo, no identifying numbers, just a long, dark trailer and a cab coated in road grime. The driver didn't get out right away. The engine idled, low and steady. I picked up the radio to call dispatch, then remembered no one was there to answer. After a moment, the back of the truck opened. The interior was dark. No light came on. No silhouettes moved inside. Then the pallets started sliding out, slowly, smoothly, as if pushed by invisible hands. I stared at the screen, waiting for a worker to appear, for some logical explanation to catch up with what I was seeing. But the pallets kept coming, box after box, stacked neatly, wrapped in dull plastic. Finally, the truck pulled away. No paperwork, no signature, no human being ever visible on camera. I should have called the police. I know that now. But at the time, my brain was still trying to file everything into a category that made sense. Maybe a third-party contractor, maybe a glitch in the camera feed. I went down to the loading bay myself. The cold hit me immediately. The doors were open just enough to let the pallets through, snow blowing in around them. There were 6 pallets total, each stacked with identical boxes. No labels, no barcodes, no shipping information at all. Just plain brown cardboard sealed with clear tape. I sliced one open. Inside was a toy. It looked like something meant for a child, but wrong in subtle ways. A stuffed bear with proportions that didn't quite match.
Its arms were too long. Its eyes were glassy and overly detailed, set too far apart. The fur felt coarse, almost greasy under my gloves. I set it back in the box and sealed it again. That's when the radio crackled. I hadn't touched it. At first, I thought it was static. Then I realized it wasn't noise at all. It was breathing, slow, wet, rhythmic. I turned the volume down, heart pounding. The sound followed, growing louder, as if the radio itself was listening to me. I switched it off completely. The warehouse fell into a silence so complete it rang in my ears. Behind me, something moved. I spun around, flashlight raised, scanning the rows of shelves. Nothing, just endless aisles of decorations and toys, casting long, distorted shadows. When I checked the cameras again, every single feed showed motion, not people. The toys, stuffed animals slowly turning on the shelves, plastic figurines facing the cameras one by one, ornaments swaying gently even though the air was still. On one screen, I saw the snowman cut out from aisle 14. It was closer to the camera now, close enough that I could see the drawn-on smile stretching wider than it should. I backed away from the monitors, my foot hitting one of the unmarked pallets. The box behind me shifted, just slightly, enough for the tape to creak. The radio turned itself back on. The breathing was right there now, loud, intimate, as if whoever or whatever was on the other end was standing just behind my shoulder. I ran. I didn't clock out, I didn't grab my coat, I didn't even shut the loading bay doors. I ran till my lungs burned and my hands went numb from the cold. I never went back. The company called me the next day. Then again, voicemails piled up. They said the warehouse cameras had malfunctioned, the pallets were gone, no record of any delivery existed. They told me I was overreacting, but I know what I heard. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear that breathing, steady, patient, waiting, and I know that somewhere those boxes are still being delivered, just in time for Christmas.
I only took the job because it was temporary. Evergreen Community Center needed a night security guard for the Christmas season, someone to watch the building while it was decorated, stocked, and mostly empty. The regular guard was on leave, and they didn't want to hire anyone long-term for just 2 weeks. The pay was decent. The hours were long but quiet. I figured it would be the easiest money I'd make all year. I was wrong. The building itself was old, built sometime in the late 70s. It sat at the edge of town, surrounded by a small park that looked cheerful during the day and unsettling at night. Large glass doors at the entrance, long hallways inside, rooms meant for meetings, classes, and children's events. During December, the place was filled with decorations, wreaths, strings of lights, cardboard displays, and a massive Christmas exhibit set up in the main hall. That exhibit was the centerpiece, a detailed miniature village with a model train looping through it, snow-covered houses, tiny street lamps, little plastic people frozen in cheerful poses. The train ran on a low platform, circling endlessly during the day while families walked past and took pictures. At night, everything was supposed to be shut down. My first few shifts were uneventful. I walked the halls every hour, checked doors, watched the cameras, drank bad coffee from a paper cup. The building made the usual noises, pipes clicking, the heating system sighing, distant pops as the temperature dropped outside. By Christmas Eve, the center was closed completely. No events, no visitors, just me, alone in a building decorated for people who wouldn't be there. I remember noticing how strange it felt to see all those lights on with no one around to enjoy them. At midnight, I did my routine check of the main hall.
The Christmas village sat dark and still. The train was stopped, exactly as it should be. I checked the power strip beneath the platform. The switch was off. I even unplugged it just to be thorough. Then I returned to the security office and sat down to watch the monitors. That was when the music started. It came from the radio on my desk, a soft, crackling version of a Christmas song, one of those old recordings with too much hiss and not enough warmth. I frowned and reached for the volume knob. The radio had no batteries in it. I knew that because I'd taken them out earlier that night when it started picking up static. I hadn't replaced them. I turned the radio off anyway. The music didn't stop. It grew quieter, thinner, like it was being played from far away, but it was still there. I picked up the radio and felt my stomach drop. The battery compartment was empty. I unplugged the radio from the wall. The music faded, then disappeared entirely. I stood there longer than I'd like to admit, listening to the silence, trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Faulty wiring, residual power, something I didn't understand but didn't need to fear. 10 minutes later, the motion sensor alarm chimed. Main hall. I switched to the camera feed. The train was moving, slowly, smoothly, circling the village as if it had never been turned off. Tiny lights inside the houses flickered on, one by one, casting warm glows through painted windows. The power strip was still unplugged. I could see it on the camera, cord lying uselessly on the floor. I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. I left the office and walked back to the main hall with flashlight in hand. The music returned as I approached, not from the radio this time, but from somewhere inside the building, thin, warped, like it was being played through walls. When I stepped into the hall, the sound stopped. The train continued to run. I crouched beside the display and touched the track. It vibrated faintly under my fingers, alive with motion it had no right to have. I looked around, half expecting someone to be watching me. The hall was empty. I unplugged the entire extension cord from the wall and carried it across the room, setting it far from the display. The train slowed, then stopped. The lights in the village went dark. I stood there for a long moment, heart racing, then forced myself to laugh. I told myself I was tired, that my brain was filling in gaps because I was alone on Christmas Eve. I went back to the security office. At 1:34 a.m., the hallway lights turned on themselves. Not all at once, one section at a time, like something was moving through the building, triggering them deliberately. The cameras showed nothing. No person, no shadow. Just light after light coming alive, leading away from the main hall and toward the children's activity wing. I didn't want to follow them, but it was my job. The children's wing was decorated more heavily than the rest of the building. Paper snowflakes taped to walls, handwritten letters to Santa, a small stage set up for holiday performances. At the far end of the hall sat a storage room I hadn't checked all night. The door was open. Inside, the radio was playing again. I could hear the breathing beneath the music this time, slow, intentional, as if someone were standing very close to the microphone. The radio sat on a shelf, still without batteries. The moment I stepped into the room, the lights shut off behind me. Total darkness. Then the train whistle sounded. Sharp, high, echoing through the building. It came from everywhere at once. The lights flickered back on, and I ran. I didn't stop to shut anything down. I didn't return to the office. I ran out the front doors into the cold night air, my breath coming out in panicked gasps. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the building. From the outside, it looked peaceful, festive, strings of lights glowing softly through the windows.
through the glass, I could see the train running again. I quit the next morning. They told me the systems had been checked, no faults found, no record of unusual activity. The decorations were taken down a week later without incident. But sometimes, when I drive past the old community center late at night, I swear I hear music bleeding into the street, and I never slow down to listen.
We rented the cabin because we wanted quiet. That was the whole point of the trip. Christmas had been loud that year. Family arguments, crowded stores, constant noise. My brother suggested we disappear for a few days, just the two of us. A cabin in the woods, deep enough into the forest that phone reception was unreliable and neighbors were non-existent. The listing promised isolation. It delivered. The cabin sat at the edge of a frozen clearing, surrounded by tall, bare trees that creaked softly when the wind moved through them. Snow covered everything in thick, untouched layers. The nearest road was almost a mile away, and even that was barely more than a narrow strip cut through the woods. When we arrived, it felt perfect. The cabin was small but sturdy. One bedroom, a loft, a fireplace that took effort to light but burned warm once it caught. The owner had left a note on the table welcoming us and reminding us to keep the doors locked at night because of wildlife. That seemed reasonable. Deer tracks crossed the clearing. Something larger had moved near the tree line. We spent the first day chopping wood, drinking cheap whiskey, and congratulating ourselves on choosing the most peaceful Christmas we'd ever had. The first sign that something was wrong came just after sunset. I was outside stacking firewood when I noticed marks on the front door. Thin lines scratched into the wood, vertical and uneven, as if something sharp had been dragged down the surface. I assumed it was an animal, a bear maybe, standing up to test the door. My brother wasn't convinced. The scratches were too narrow, too deliberate. Still, we laughed it off, locked the door, pulled the curtains, added more wood to the fire. That night, the temperature dropped hard. The fire crackled, the wind howled through the trees. At some point, I woke up needing water. That's when I saw the footprints. They were right outside the front window. Bare footprints, human feet, toes and arches clearly defined in the snow. No boots, no socks, just skin pressed into ice. They circled the cabin. I woke my brother and we checked every window together. The footprints were everywhere, around the walls, beneath the windows, right up to the door. But here's the part that still makes my stomach turn. They didn't come from anywhere. No tracks leading toward the cabin, none leading away, just a ring of bare footprints, perfectly spaced, as if whoever made them had walked in slow, deliberate circles around us. We didn't sleep after that. When morning came, the footprints were still there, untouched by wind, untouched by animals, as sharp and clear as if they'd been made minutes earlier. My brother wanted to leave immediately. I didn't argue, but before we packed up, he said he wanted to check the perimeter one last time, just to make sure there wasn't some explanation we were missing. He stepped outside alone. I watched him from the doorway as he followed the footprints around the cabin. Halfway through the circle, he stopped. He tilted his head slightly, like he was listening. Then he said my name. Not shouted, not scared, calm, confused. He told me he could hear someone calling him from the trees. I didn't hear anything. I told him to come back inside. He took one step toward the tree line. That's when the footprints appeared again. Fresh ones, pressing down into untouched snow, one by one, moving toward him from the forest. Still barefoot, still no trail behind them. I screamed his name. He snapped out of it, turned and ran back to the cabin. We slammed the door shut and locked it. Something scraped along the outside wall that night. Slow,
patient, like fingernails testing the wood. We left before sunrise, didn't clean, didn't care, drove straight through the snow until we hit the main road. Neither of us spoke about it for years, but sometimes around Christmas, my brother tells me he still hears that voice, calling him out into the cold. And he knows if he ever answers it again, he won't come back barefoot.
The winter my father almost died didn't begin with fear. It began with numbers. Bills stacked on the kitchen table, red envelopes, late notices, conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. My parents tried to shield me from it, but children always know when something is wrong. You can hear it in the way adults breathe when they think no one is listening. My father had owned a small business for most of my life. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept food on the table. Then the contracts dried up. One client after another disappeared. By December, we were weeks away from losing the house. Christmas decorations went up anyway. My mother insisted. She said traditions mattered most when everything else was falling apart. The tree was smaller that year, fewer presents. The lights flickered because one strand was half broken, but no one complained. My father smiled more than usual. That should have worried me. On Christmas Eve, after dinner, he told us he needed to step out later that night, just for a little while. He said a buyer had reached out about some equipment he was trying to sell. Cash, no paperwork, no waiting. My mother didn't like it. Neither did I. He brushed off our concerns, said desperation made people suspicious, and promised he'd be back before midnight. He even joked about it, saying it was his Christmas miracle. That was the last thing he said before I went to bed. I fell asleep faster than I expected, and then I dreamed. In the dream, our house was empty. No furniture, no lights, just long shadows stretching across bare floors. I could hear my father's footsteps echoing somewhere ahead of me, slow and heavy, as if he were walking through deep water. I followed the sound until I reached the front door. It was open. Outside wasn't our street. It wasn't anywhere I recognized, just darkness, not night, something thicker, something that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. My father stood at the threshold, his back to me. I called his name. He didn't turn around. I ran toward him, but the floor stretched longer with every step. The darkness outside began to move, folding inward like it was breathing. My father stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed into that blackness, the shadows surged. I screamed. I woke up gasping, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard movement, the soft creak of the front door opening. I didn't think, I didn't question, I ran. My father was halfway out the door, coat on, keys in his hand. The porch light cast his shadow long and distorted across the snow. I grabbed his arm. I begged him not to go. The words came out wrong, panicked, desperate. I told him about the dream, about the darkness, about him disappearing into it. He looked at me the way adults do when they're trying to hide concern behind patience. He told me it was just a nightmare, stress, everything we'd been dealing with. I didn't let go. I told him I couldn't explain it, but if he walked out that door, something terrible would happen, that I could feel it, that it wasn't just a dream. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he sighed, closed the door, and set his keys on the table. He told me we'd talk about it in the morning. I stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting on the couch, watching the front door like it might open on its own. It didn't. The buyer never called again. Weeks passed. Slowly, things stabilized. A loan came through. A relative helped us out. We never became rich, but we survived. Life moved on. Years later, after my father passed away from natural causes, My mother told me something she'd never shared before. The night I had the dream, my father hadn't been meeting a buyer. He'd been meeting a stranger. Someone who insisted on a late-night exchange, cash only, no address given until the last minute, a location just outside town near an old industrial site. The man had refused to talk on the phone. My father felt uneasy, but he planned to go anyway. When my mother asked him why he didn't, he told her it felt like something was pulling him away from the house, like leaving meant stepping into something he wouldn't come back from. He never found out who the buyer was. No similar listings ever appeared. No one else reported contact. Sometimes, late at night, I still dream of that doorway, the darkness waiting patiently on the other side. And I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up when I did. Because some dreams don't come to scare us. They come to stop us from opening the door.
None of these stories ended with monsters standing in plain sight. They ended with silence, with doors left unopened, with moments where one small choice changed everything. And maybe that's what makes them linger, because in another version of the night, these stories could have ended very differently. If these quiet horrors stayed with you, if you found yourself listening a little more closely to the sounds around you, then the stories have done their job. If you enjoyed this style of slow, atmospheric horror, please like this video, share it with someone who isn't afraid of late-night stories, and subscribe to the channel for more true and unsettling tales. Thank you for listening, and may your night remain peaceful if nothing decides to disturb it.